Hi there guys, and welcome back to SitRep Gaming. In today's video we're going to be discussing sound design, and more importantly how important sound design is to Call of Duty and our ability to perform well in the multiplayer. Now the gameplay that you're seeing is from Call of Duty Ghosts, a game which despite all its flaws actually had exceptionally good sound design. The gameplay is a TDM on the map Whiteout, and after a bit of a slow start encountering some snipers, turn things around, go on some big streaks, get almost 40 kills and turn in another victory for the team. But anyway, let's get straight into the topic of conversation for today's video. So, sound design. As I'm sure many of you will know, most people interact with video games on a visual basis, and this is no different in Call of Duty. The predominant thing which dictates the decisions that we make when we play the game is what we see. However, that isn't to say that when good sound design is incorporated into a Call of Duty title, that astute players can use the information provided in sound design to impact significantly on the way we play the game and giving good players an advantage. Now, when I think back over Call of Duty titles over the last few years, the incorporation of sound design is a patchy topic to say the least. Some games have done it really well, and some games have done it really poorly. Now, two titles which jump out at me as having exceptionally good sound design are Call of Duty Ghosts and Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And each of those two games displays an element of sound design which I think are really important to the way we play the game. And those two elements are going to be the main bulk of today's discussion. So the first of those elements is displayed in Call of Duty Ghosts really well, and that is the incorporation of footsteps in sound design. Now, footsteps, for those of you who don't know, is simply the sound that an enemy gives off when they're moving, allowing us to pinpoint whereabouts they are and know if there essentially is an enemy around us, giving us quite a significant tactical advantage. Now, whenever I go back and play Call of Duty Ghosts, one of the things which strikes me is how crystal clear the footsteps are in relation to the balance of the other audio elements, things such as the ambient sounds of the map, the call-outs given by friendly teammates, and the weapon sounds in general. The footsteps are really crisp, they're really deep, and they're very easy to pick out. Now, not only that, but in Call of Duty Ghosts, the footsteps actually contain another layer of metadata which really astute players can draw upon to help give them even more of a tactical advantage. And that is that the footsteps reveal what kind of surface an enemy is walking on. So, for instance, on the map you're watching now, on Whiteout, as you can see, it's predominantly a snowy environment. So it logically follows that people are predominantly walking on snow. However, the map also has elements which are based on wooden cladding. It also has elements which are based on tarmac and gravel. And when players walk on each of these elements, you'll notice that the sound of the footstep is different. So once you've managed to learn the difference between these sounds, you can actually interpret the footstep further, and it will give you even more of a tactical advantage than you had before. You're going to be able to orient yourself. If you have good map design and know where all the different elements are in the map, you're going to know exactly where people are. So Call of Duty Ghosts is a great example of how having really clear, really deep and informative footsteps can give players a significant tactical advantage. Now, another game which has excellent footstep sounds is Black Ops 3, but the quality of its footsteps are actually only one element of what generally I think is one of the best sound designs we've ever had in a Call of Duty title. Now, the other element that I want to pick up on in today's video is one that Black Ops 3 demonstrates very well, and that are its gun sounds. And when I say gun sounds, I don't necessarily mean how good the gun sounds in terms of is it loud, is it clear, does it sound realistic. I mean the ability to differentiate between what gun a player is using purely on sound. And Black Ops 3 does this incredibly well. So when I'm playing Black Ops 3 and I can't see an enemy, but I know they're there and I can hear them firing, I can pretty much tell what gun they're using purely on sound. Now you might think to yourself, well, what kind of tactical advantage would this afford a really astute player? Well, let me put it like this. If you're moving around the map and you suddenly hear the sound of, let's say, the two-shot LMG, the Gorgon, and you know from the sound of the weapon that it's quite far away, perhaps they're holding down a flank, well, that's going to dictate the route which you take if you only have an SMG, because you're not going to want to engage in that gunfight. So being able to differentiate between the different gun sounds impacts massively on the decision making that you make when you play the game. Similarly, if an enemy is using the Pharaoh burstfire SMG, which has an incredibly distinctive sound, and you've only got an LMG or an AR, you might suddenly veer away from an area because you fear that you won't be able to compete with the weapon that person has in that gunfight should you choose to take place. So again, the information that we perceive from the differentiation of gun sounds massively impacts on the decision making we make when we play the game. So that's an element of sound which Black Ops 3 does really well. And between the two games, Ghost and Black Ops 3, I think they're probably the two titles which have had the best sound design of any Call of Duty we've seen over the last few years. Now unfortunately there have been several titles which haven't done sound particularly well. Notably would be Advanced Warfare, which had some of the worst footsteps I think I've ever heard, so hard to pick out and, let's be honest, completely useless. And whilst I think Infinite Warfare does get a bit of a bad rep with its sound design, because I personally think the footsteps are very easy to pick out, the differentiation between weapon sounds in Infinite Warfare is really poor, and it's difficult to know exactly what weapon someone is using, and there's not really much information that you can glean from that element of sound design in Infinite Warfare. So, having picked out those two key elements of sound design, let's now look forward to Call of Duty World War II. Now, as I'm sure, like many of you have been doing, I've been on YouTube recently watching a lot of the gameplay footage which is coming out of E3, and one of the things which is concerning me is I'm having real difficulty in picking out footsteps. And I don't know about you guys, but if there's no footsteps in a Call of Duty sound, the Call of Duty game, sorry, it really impacts upon the way that I play the game, and it introduces a slightly random feeling. Now obviously this is a very early alpha build of the game that we're seeing, so things are subject to change. Now who knows, maybe footsteps will become more prominent as the game gets further in development. Obviously we have an open beta coming up in August, so players are going to be able to leave feedback, and I certainly will be feeding back about the sound of the footsteps, so who knows, maybe things will change. But right now, it does concern me in Call of Duty World War II that footsteps don't appear to be, shall we say, too clear. Now what I want to know is how important is sound design to you guys? So if footsteps are important, if differentiating between weapons are important, leave a comment down below and let me know what's the most important aspect of sound design when you play Call of Duty. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have, then please leave a like rating because it's greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to see more content from the channel, then don't forget to subscribe to SitRep Gaming, and also turn on those notifications so that you never miss another video. All that's left to say is thanks for tuning into SitRep Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.